Good day. There are a number of geopolitical issues going on around the world now that keeps the world on edge. Most notably, the war in Gaza between Israel and the Palestinian Hamas group, and then the threat between America and Iran, and the strong attempts by the Americans to contain China, and all the crisis going on in the South China Sea within that neighborhood. Recently, there was one between Pakistan and India that was quickly put to rest so that it won't flare up beyond that because those two countries are nuclear armed states. But if anything threatens the world, it will be the ongoing war in Ukraine between Russia on one hand and Ukraine and a whole coterie of Western backers on the other hand. This war has been going on now for 3 years. Effectively, it is said to have started in February 2022, but the events leading up to the war had started long before then. That is one event that has reshaped the world. It has reshaped warfare. It has reshaped the economics and geopolitical lineage of the world. And in furthering all the events that happened, we are now at the threshold of a new reality. Today, or just within these past few hours, the new German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, approved the use of Taurus long-range missiles by Ukraine, and they were given permission to be able to shoot into Russia, shoot military assets in Russia. The Russians have responded that they will consider Germany as a co-belligerent in the war if that happens. Since coming into office, President Donald Trump has tried his best to try and initiate peace talks between the Ukrainians and the Russians. His attempts have met a wall of, how will I say, disagreements between groups. The Europeans, for in their own part, don't want the war to end. They see and they believe that Ukraine is the how do they normally say that thing? The fruit, the tree that keeps giving. Ukraine has decided that they need the long-held hatred against the Russians. They will fight on behalf of the West to the last Ukrainian, and the West is their only responsibility is contain Russia, sanction Russia, undermine Russia's political, diplomatic, and economic strengths, and support Ukraine. Ukraine is putting the bodies forward that the West is fighting, is supporting them to fight this war. This war has been a strong one that it is assumed that it is thought that over 1 million people have died on both the Ukrainian and the Russian side. But that war has really done a lot of things to change the way the world is. The military resilience of the Russians has shocked a lot of people. Their ability to meander and forge new friendships and new allies, even in the face of 22,000 rounds of sanctions, has shown a resilience and a robustness that has surprised everybody. And one big player here who is not showing their hand, but who has pitched their tent with the Russians are the Chinese. The Indians have been economic partners of the Russians in this war, more so, but the Chinese have been strong diplomatic partners. They've supported them in every part of the way, and they've chosen not to be part of the war. But everybody knows that if this war moves in a different way, the Chinese will throw their hats with the Russians. And that is what Donald Trump wants to try and break up. In pushing at Putin, the Biden administration made the Russians to get closer to the Chinese. And now they have an alliance that is being viewed as not too good for the Western Alliance, the NATO group. But this recent move by Friedrich Merz has taken giving a new meaning to what the war will be now, especially as it is that this past few weeks, the Ukrainians have stepped up a very serious campaign of bombing, throwing a lot of drones at Moscow, trying to get to do damage to Moscow, the Russian city of Moscow. They've over the past few weeks, they've launched over almost 1,000 drones at the different Russian cities, but particularly they've made an attempt to damage stuff in Moscow. And the retaliation of the Russians has put a new meaning to this war at a time that Donald Trump is struggling so much to try and make them to find peace. But there's no talk of peace on the side of the Europeans. The Europeans, namely France, England, and Germany, want the Ukrainians to continue the war. They make no bones about it. They want the Ukrainians to fight on their behalf because for them, they can't stand having Russia as a great power amongst them, a regional hegemon. That is not supposed to happen. And when we look at all these realities going on now, you start to wonder, are we slowly teetering on the verge of World War III? Donald Trump has said that in pushing this war, he accused Zelensky when Zelensky came to the White House that Zelensky's recalcitrance and his not agreeing to any attempt at peace may push this world to World War III. We may not be looking at the war the way it is now because the Russians are on the verge of launching a new offensive. In the past 3 years, the Russians have won over vast parts of the Donbass, Kherson and Zaporozhye, Dnipro, and it is on the basis of this fact that they have not only won this land, they have now done referendums, and in that referendum, the people in those regions have become part of Russia. Putin is now threatening that if the Ukrainians don't take peace on its own terms, the next time they will be discussing peace, he will be controlling 8 oblasts within Ukraine. So far, he has even announced that he's going to form a buffer zone in some provinces in Ukraine. And this means that they are going to take significant parts of Ukraine. That is, from what was announced, it will be 100-mile deep, 100 kilometers deep into Ukraine to protect Russian cities because of the extensive barrage of drone attacks that was launched over the past 2 weeks. But in all the recalcitrance of the West, we should remember one thing. The great powers of England, Germany, France have always been at the center of all the world wars we've had. The First World War, the Second World War, and the Third World, and the slowly marching into a Third World War. Are we marching into a Third World War? This is the question here now. Because look at it, let's not forget that in the First World War, it was just some disagreement between the Serbians and the Russians and the Germans, and next thing you know, we had a world war. In the case of the Second World War, the Germans also now said, look, we are getting to that point where we cannot stand the terms put on us from the settlement of the First World War. And that created a leader in Hitler. And we all know what history brought out for us. Now, this Ukraine war has been going on here now, reshaping new ties, reshaping new alliances. Russia is, over the past 3 years, have become financially, militarily, and economically stronger. Much against what the West wanted it to be. When they threw all those sanctions at Russia, the expectation was not that Russia will become much stronger than it is now, to the point where it has developed new weapon systems that are a clear and present threat to the whole of Europe. The whole, not even England is safe. And even those ones with nuclear power, they have their deterrent systems, and we are talking about France and Britain here. At a time that America says this war in Europe is not our war, we want to leave this war in Europe. But the Europeans don't want America to leave. They want America to be part of the war. They are hanging on to Donald Trump's legs like a baby holding on to the leg of someone that don't leave this war, help be with us so that we can defeat Russia together. But there's a threat there. Everybody knows that Russia cannot be allowed to be defeated by the Chinese. The Iranians and the Chinese and the North Koreans, if it comes to that point, will throw their weight behind the Russians. It is very clear. Everybody sees that. But beyond that also, the Russians also have 7,000 warheads. They have delivery systems for these warheads. They have the world's largest arsenal of nuclear weapons. And all these nuclear warheads that they have, 7,000 of them, it's the biggest in the world. They have not come to that point where they'll be using them tactically or strategically. They feel that they can contain the war so far at a conventional level. But any threat to their existence is a threat that can lead to escalation of things. And the way the world is going now, we're really getting worried. Are we tottering towards World War III? It is just happening slowly, it reminds me of when COVID started in China. And it was like one far off, distant thing that people were just saying there's a new virus happening in China, people are dying, they're not giving us enough information. And 3 months later, the whole world was locked down. It is so worrying. While the issues are going on in Ukraine, issues are also going on in Israel, things you just don't even want to read about anymore. It's numbing when you read about all that is going on in the Gaza Strip, in Ukraine, in Russia. This is like a cancer that is building up slowly, and it gets us, those of us who worry at geopolitics. Geopolitics, when interests of big powers clash with that of a small power, and we read about them crushing Sudan or rebels in Chad or this, and that's not the same as when the big powers of the world start to disagree militarily. It never ends up well. So even though Donald Trump has made concerted effort to try and end this war, people don't want him to end the war. In America here, we have what we call the deep state. And the deep state has an interest in continuing the war. They have made it known to him that this war is not one they want America to leave. The whole idea here is to contain China and drain Russia. But Russia is not being drained. Russia is being strengthened. We don't really know if any of all the attempts in the past 3 years has diminished Russia or bled Russia. It's not happening. Russia is getting stronger. And a strong Russia each time issues more ominous ultimatums. Now they are telling the Ukrainians that they will take 8 oblasts. They're telling them that they can destroy Kiev. They will leave them as a rump state. Medvedev, the head of the vice chairman of the Security Council in Russia, is always making very, very maximalist proclamations that frighten everybody. And this is where we are now. So we worry. Are we tottering towards escalation of the Ukraine war? It's really worrisome when Metz makes a pronouncement that says we now allow the Ukrainians to use Taurus missile systems against Russia. Russia has said that they will now consider Germany as a co-belligerent. It just takes for the Russians to do one decisive retaliatory move against a NATO member, possibly blow up one ship or blow up one military base, and then we have a crisis. Because we can remember that in an attempt to contain the Russian shadow fleet recently, the Estonians tried to stop a Russian ship, and the Russians had to move in with one of their vaunted Su-34 or Su-35 and almost blew up the Estonian ships out of the I think there was the Baltic Sea. And it's a confrontation between NATO and Russia is getting closer and closer and closer. And the Russians are not showing any sign of backing down. They are getting more confident, they're getting stronger, they are in this time when everybody is Trump is more about America first. In this time where the spending of America, limitless spending, is being questioned as America's currency is being undermined. At this time when reducing deficit is what is at the head of Trump, and he's not ready to just be going into forever wars anymore. It's the same time that this thing is trying to escalate, and there's a dilemma for everybody. But nobody can really understand the hatred that drives these Europeans. They are worse than even the Africans going it at each other. The Europeans continue to give us wars. They tell us that they are the civilized societies. But all the wars, the most brutal wars, when you hear of the kind of deaths that come out of their wars, the kind of barbaric actions that come out of those wars, World War One, World War Two, the killing of the Jews, the killing of 27 million Russians, the killing of all these kind of things is what the Europeans give to the world. And we are really worried now if the Europeans are insisting in pushing this world to another world war with their relentless desire to make sure that this Ukrainian war escalates beyond what it should be. I would like to get your opinion about what we are seeing here now. It's worrying. It really is worrying. In Africa, we have issues. In Asia, we have issues. In Southeast Asia, there are issues. In Latin America, there are issues. But the one issue that has already changed the world to a large extent, divided it into clear-cut parts of Russia supporters and Russia haters. Mostly, the whole world is with Russia, and then the Western world is with Ukraine. This cleavage is redefining security structures in the world, economic ties, and so many things, and redefining the whole world. But will it possibly lead to the destruction of the world? I'd like to get your opinion about what is going on here now, what you think about it. If you like what I've been doing, please subscribe, support the growth of this channel, give me feedback, give me comments, let us discuss these issues. The Ukraine war is one I've tried not to talk much about, but it is one that is the focal point of most discussions on YouTube. There are over 1 million channels that discuss this war and follow it on a day-to-day basis. Some of them even give hourly reports on what is going on. There are a lot of mapping channels that map the progress on the war and all that. It has got the world fixated for the past 3 years. Tell me what you think about it, and tell me how you think this war is going to reshape the world, how it is impacting the world, and what suggestions you have about things regarding what we're discussing on this matter. Thank you for being a part of this program to this point. Subscribe, like, and share. Thank you. Thank you. Until my next video. See you.